Andre, appreciate you sharing a little time to just talk a little bit about some things you and I have talked about. Off the record, you and I have talked a little bit about kind of sometimes as coaches we see something broke and we want to fix it. I think
Absolutely.
we recognize that with the things going on right now, that there are definitely some things that are broke. That we want to do our part as a program to try to create this kind of concept of listening and learning, and helping people see other perspectives. So I appreciate you sharing some of your perspectives today to just kind of aid this process of listening and learning, and moving forward with some people, and maybe hearing some real talk, some real stories, some real talk that I know in my life has helped me. So you and I talked about, maybe first of all, kind of opening with a little bit talking about your background to kind of help people know. Some people know your background, some people don't.
Well, absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, Coach. Appreciate everything you're doing, for the university and our football program. But yeah, I was born in Columbus, obviously, in Columbus, Ohio. Very diverse, back in the 80s. And then I moved up to Westerville. When I moved to Westerville, it was just the beginning. It's not the Westerville now. A lot of people know the Westerville now is a diverse community, but back then it wasn't too many African Americans up there, and that's when I really saw the first time of racism in my face. You knew about it. Obviously, I was young, 8, 9, 10 years old, but then that's when I first saw it in my face. From there, I moved up to Warrensville Heights, which is in a suburb in Cleveland, and and that was an all African American community.
Sure.
So I saw both sides, and I had to adjust, just like I had to adjust in Westerville. I had to adjust to an all African American community as well. And it was a good program, obviously, with sports and things of that nature. And from there, I went to Shaker Heights. And I went to Shaker Heights, which was probably the most diverse community that I've been a part of, and one of the most diverse in the state of Ohio. And I learned a lot. And that's why, when you talk to me, I always claim that I'm from Cleveland. And even though I was born in Columbus, I always say I came from Cleveland, because I think and I believe that made me who I am today.
Sure. Coach Dave Sedmak, your coach there.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, good man. Way back when I stopped in the school, try to recruit you way back in those days when you were a senior. But
back in the Worcester days.
First time I ever met you. But let's talk a little bit about. I think it's really helpful for some people to just know sometimes what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't you share with us, maybe, I know you have shared previously, but if you could, for those that haven't seen, maybe heard you speak about, maybe a story about maybe where you experienced racism.
Yes. Unfortunately, I have a lot of stories, but, the one that I always bring up is in St. Charles, Missouri. A lot of people don't know that I went to Lindenwood University. Very, very good program, Division II program. Now it was NAIA back then. It was two friends. We had two white friends and me and another African American, and we was after a workout. So we had our hoodies on. It's chilly. We had our hoodies on, and back then, I used to go to Best Buy every week, Coach, to get CDs. You had to get CDs. Couldn't download anything back then. Right. So that was just one of my things that I've done. And when we got to Best Buy, just a normal day, we just walk around the store and. It was followed. I was followed, but I didn't pay no mind. Unfortunately, I've been followed before. Before we walked out the store, the security said, you guys need to stay in, and I'm like, stay in for what? We've had a conversation, you guys. He said that you guys were stealing, and I said we're not stealing. I'm thinking he's joking, like not knowing what's going on. I'm thinking he's joking. I pull out, stuff. I don't have anything, Well, you got to, they're going back and forth. You got to have something, So I get mad, I kind of disrespected and, talk to him in a certain way, but, not really going overboard. And at the same time, he let my
you're just shocked. Yeah, you're shocked.
Yeah, I'm just shocked.
Yeah,
absolutely, just shocked that was going on because, I think I was a good kid growing up, and I was raised right from my mom and dad, and at that same time, he let my two Caucasian friends go to my car. And it was my car that I drove up there, which is another thing. And they sat in the car and they kept me and my African American friend, who's from St. Louis, So he kind of experienced a lot of things as well, if you know St. Louis. And
Yep.
anyway, back by the end of the time, I had, some lawyers, and I always say, you never know who, what type of people you were talking to, and what kind of backing they have, and had my family lawyers write letters and things of that nature. But, when we got to the car, the biggest thing that I took from the story was my two Caucasian friends, they asked us, and they were saying, I thought you guys were joking, talking to me and my other friend about what goes on. And I didn't get, I kind of got loud, like, no, we don't joke. This goes around. This goes
Right.
around for forever. And, and they kind of respected. Obviously, we were close, and we're close to this day. And, that's my story of there. Got plenty
Yeah.
of other stories, but that was one of the stories
Sure.
that really
Well,
touched me.
no doubt. I appreciate you sharing that, because I've seen certain things like that, and I appreciate you sharing that, because it's not fun to relive it. But while you have many, many others you didn't share, that one
Right.
I think is a great illustration of kind of what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. So appreciate you sharing that. And one of the things I heard one time that I think makes a lot of sense to me is we have to stand in our own truth. And those of us
Mm-hmm.
that haven't experienced something like that, part of standing in our own truth is recognizing what others go through. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about maybe a time where, one of the great things about a team, a football team is very diverse, and other sports, have some similar opportunities, but maybe could you share a story of a situation where maybe you saw a team connect, you
Mm-hmm.
saw some teammates connect, you saw some people connect, and focus on maybe what they had in common as opposed to what they had that was different?
Well, as you said earlier, I went to Shaker Heights High School, and was coached by the great, I call him the great, David said, Matt. He
Great,
changed our program all around.
great
But,
man.
absolutely, and love him to death. My 10th grade year, obviously I was freshman year. We was just on the freshman team, but my 10th grade year, I was a part of a varsity team. And in Shaker, if you know Shaker, there's Italians, Caucasians, African Americans, and Jewish. That's pretty much what we're made of.
No
And,
doubt.
those guys took it to another level my 10th grade year. They would pick us up no matter what side of town you were on, pick you up, drive you around town. This is going on in the summer, off season.
Yep.
Obviously, during the season, if you know Cleveland and Shaker,
Yeah.
we play on Saturdays, and Shaker Heights, you play on Saturdays.
Yep.
So Friday nights we would go to games, and by the end of the year, my 10th grade year, we went 10-0.
Yep.
We lost my first round back then. It was only 4 teams that made the playoffs. We were the 4th seed, and unfortunately, we played St. Ignatius. And you guys know in the '90s, St. Ignatius was
Yeah.
a mad powerhouse.
You guys were
But
probably one of the smaller Division I schools in those days. You were just big enough to be
absolutely,
Division I, so you get stuck with those guys.
absolutely, and they were a powerhouse, and we competed, and we had a lot of talent on that. But the thing that was in common was just the love. We had that one thing in common. Obviously, we were excited to be coached by David Matt, who had an excellent staff at the time, and he loved and cared about every individual on that team just as much as anybody else. And that came down to our leaders, our captains, and they led us the way. And we came at the end of the season. We won. We won 10-0. I think it was one of the first times. I don't know exactly, but that they won the LEL. And it was a great. And those guys, our class, my class of '97. We've always gave them, the class of '95, a lot of props, because that changed our program, Shaker Heights program, really to this day. And we have love for it, and we love Shaker Heights for it. And I always say that a high school program relates to the community. And if you look at a program that we had out there, and then your community, we represented the community very, very well.
Well, and I'm sure from what I know about Shaker, from recruiting it, several years and knowing Coach Sedmak, that can unify, and that can have an impact on the rest of the school and the rest of the community by seeing people come together and seeing people focus on what they do have in common, and just love and care for each other. So I think you made a great point with that. So I appreciate you sharing those experiences, and I think hopefully some people will listen to that and learn from that and just step out of their comfort zone. I think that's ultimately what you and I talked about trying to do is just help some people see another side of it. And at the end of the day, hopefully we as a community, ONU, and as a country, that we can become who we say we are. That, we
Absolutely.
say we stand for certain things, but let's hopefully keep working in that direction to become who we say we are. So I appreciate you sharing some of those thoughts, Andre, and I'm really happy to have you on board here with us at ONU. Okay.
Appreciate it, Coach, and I appreciate you and the staff. And let's get this work done this year and go from there.
All right, man. Thank you, brother. I'm gonna
All right.
close it. I'm gonna close it right there.